All right, everybody, and welcome back to the third episode of the Delaware Dynasty Boys Fantasy Football Podcast with your co-hosts in the top left and right corner. That would be Steven and Deli. And a man that doesn't need an introduction, he's been on with us for the last two episodes. That would be my boy Frankie in the bottom middle. We've got a lot on the slate today. Today is running backs, cream of the crop, the most important position in fantasy football. And I will say that because running backs are king. They win you leagues. I've always believed in that, and I'm going to stay believing in that. Before we get started, boys, a lot is happening in the world of sports. Big time in sports, NHL playoffs, NBA play-in games. Baseball is in full swing. I know we're recording midway through the game, and I know the Nets had dropped 40 in the first quarter, so that might help you out a little bit in this. But so who's your guys' predictions in the play-in games tonight?
No, right now the Nets are still up like 13-14 is a commercial break right now. But, yeah, Kyrie, I think he ended the first quarter without missing a shot, dropped 20 on him. Or the first half, excuse me. So, yeah, Nets. And then I don't even know what the other game is tonight. But I got the Clippers coming out of the West play-in and the Hawks and the Nets coming out of the East play-in. I can't remember off the top of my head the other West play-in team.
I believe it is the
Timberwolves. And,
the T-Wolves. The T-Wolves game.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the T-Wolves. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Edwards. I'm a huge fan of Karl Anthony Towns. I'm going to ride with the T-Wolves tonight. But baseball's in full swing, boys. The Pirates are 1-3 to start the year, so the 162-0 dream is dead. What a hell of a way to start it. But all right, let's jump into it, fellas. We got the running backs on the slate. We got some real studs to talk about tonight. I mean, some absolute game-changing performance players. But Deli, first, you have a 1,500 touch rule that some might not understand, but I'm going to let you go ahead and explain it when evaluating your running backs.
I've been using this for the last couple of years. Just a pattern I kind of noticed throughout the seasons of playing fantasy football in general. So my biggest rule for like college and NFL, total touches as far as running backs has, that's receptions and touches behind the backfield. I just finally completed the whole rebuild of every running back I have. I now have no running backs close to 1,500 anymore. I'm going to continue to do that, rotate young running backs. Is probably so far I've found to be the most efficient way to play Dynasty. I think it's pretty important. And like I say 1,500 because we see these guys at these numbers. It happened with even the greats of fantasy with Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, Christian McCaffrey. Some of these guys that started out with heavy workloads in college, they come into the league great, which is fantastic, but once they get close to that 1,500, before or a little after, their bodies kind of start to break down a little bit. These injuries start to pile up. So 1,500 touch rule is something I'll live by probably until the end of time for running backs. And, yeah.
I guess my biggest question is when it comes to this rule. So, like, when you evaluate a running back and the 1,500 touch thing comes into effect, what are you going to do when you miss out on running backs like Curtis Martin, LaDainian Tomlinson, Frank Gore, AP, Matt Forte? You know, we can keep going down the list of just elite running backs that win you leagues, especially in Dynasty now that you're going to be holding these guys for a lot longer periods of time. Frank Gore was efficient and was effective until he was 33, 34. AP, the same thing. LT, the same thing. I mean, we can keep going down this list. Like, what about those guys? Are you fading them?
So what I've done through the process is kind of trade like older running backs for younger running backs to where like if these older guys continue to play at a high level, the guy that I've traded for can also play at a high level. For example, I traded Derrick Henry last season for Antonio Gibson, who has like barely any touches on his body. He started playing the running back position his sophomore year in college, so fresh to the position, fresh legs. And then this offseason, I moved Kamara in a deal for Dobbins. So So I guess I don't really see it as missing out on these younger guys. Plus, it's such a small sample size of running backs. Like you listed running backs, but these are guys that are like further out, like Curtis Martin, LT. Like we haven't seen too much in like recent days, maybe other than Derrick Henry, who was like way over that mark. But we just saw his first injury this year, so we'll see how he does this year. But like I said, as long as you can get a comparable running back that you can plug back in that's younger, I don't see any problem with it.
So my only question would be, do you apply that rule in a startup draft in a dynasty league? So like if you have like a guy like Derrick Henry or even a Jonathan Taylor type fall to you in a draft, which is unlikely with Jonathan Taylor, but even if it happens, if somebody falls like that, would you be willing to take him, or are you going to pass up for somebody that's a little younger and with fresher legs?
So Jonathan Taylor, I would take him probably first round in dynasty. I would say like that's he's probably an exception, especially because he'll probably play this full season and be fantastic again, and then I could just go year by year, and I can get probably massive value from him next offseason too, as long as he stays healthy. He hasn't hit 1,500 yet. I think he's around like 13, maybe a little bit below that. So he's got another season before he hits that mark, and then kind of see if you can't move him for a piece. But Taylor's just – I feel like he's just getting started. He kind of like breaks the rule for me, which kind of sucks to have like a weak spot in my argument, but
I guess it can be the exception to the rule.
That's just drafting Jonathan Taylor, though. I would never trade for him.
And I guess to me, it just seems like when I'm thinking of my consensus top 10 dynasty running back list, 98% of the people on that list are close or have not broken your rule. So what are you doing? Are you going wide receiver heavy and zero hero running back strategy?
I'm a wide receiver guy. The reason I like wide receivers so much is I always stack my receivers in most leagues. Like in my biggest league that I'm trying to continuously win, the league I'm commissioned, I've just stacked receivers throughout the boards. I feel like I would rather go out and get an asset like a running back, or excuse me, a receiver that's going to have me a consistent 6-7 years if you can get them young, compared to a running back where you might be lucky to get like 3-4 out of. So I'm always bigger on running backs, building my teams around. Always better building my teams around receivers than running backs in the first place. I know you're a bigger running back guy than me, so.
Running backs are the cream of the crop, baby. But we're going to jump into it, man. And the guy that I got to give the props to, I owned him in 9 dynasty leagues that I play in. Traded him in 3. Absolutely broke my heart to trade this man. But if he's not your consensus dynasty running back 1, I don't know what you're on. I don't know what you're smoking. But Jonathan Taylor, fellas. Dude came in the league. Deli, I remember talking to you about it last year. You said he started out slow. COVID, no off-season training camp, no preseason games, nothing like that. Then you wanted to specifically talk about the fumble in the Ravens game last year. Got pulled from the 3rd and 4th quarter. Then the second half of the year, balled out. Comes into this year, balls out.
Yep.
To me, it's very hard for running backs to win MVPs. And, I mean, he had an MVP caliber season. I mean, look at it. Never averaged under 5 yards a carry in the league yet. Granted, he's only 2 years in. 2,000 scrimmage yards, 20 touchdowns. The dude just stands out, and he's just a stud, absolute stud.
Yeah, he's an animal. And he's running behind one of the best offensive lines in football, which only helps him more. But, yeah, he's a beast with the rock in his hand, and he's hard to catch once he breaks loose.
The biggest thing to me, too, 30 touches from within the 5-yard line. Next running back closest to him had 18. This offense is Jonathan Taylor. This offense is built around Jonathan Taylor, and he's what's going to make this offense go. No offense to Matt Ryan, but at this point, Matt's not going to beat you. He's going to give the ball to Jonathan Taylor 25 times, and he's going to be happy to give the ball to Jonathan Taylor 25 times. This dude's an absolute stud. It's Taylor, then it's Pittman, and then it's a huge drop-off in anybody else on that Colts roster. But if you own Jonathan Taylor, you're very lucky. and you might get an overpay. You're actually going to get an overpay in any league you play in. If they want Taylor, they're going to have to overpay to get him.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate enough to trade for Taylor this offseason, and I like to think I got him at a bargain basement price. So
yeah, I agree with that. You did.
But yeah, Jonathan Taylor's a guy I was fortunate enough to get my hands on this season, and I'm very excited to see what he can do going into this season. He's so fast for how big he runs.
Dude, 23 miles an hour.
It's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
He just gets into the open field, and it's like, oh, there's no way he's out. Oh, he's gone. Okay, got it. Yeah, he's faster than your brain basically when it comes to football. So, I love Jonathan Taylor, man. He's so fun to watch.
Frankie, but the next thing I want to talk about, and actually Ryan, you too. We have had multiple discussions about this guy. Also, we have all tried to acquire him. Frankie, you have him. You will not give him to me. Ryan, you just traded for him in your league as well. I can't seem to get my hands on him except for one league in a 14-team league I'm in. But J.K. Dobbins, and I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I'm a biased Penn State fan. I hate Ohio State. But when you see talent, you see talent. Kid can absolutely play. And the best thing about it is Greg Roman knows he can play. Yep. Granted, he's with Lamar Jackson. That does hurt a little bit of rushing upside. But in an offense like the Ravens, and you got the running back one, I want all the shares of that. I don't care about Melvin Gordon being there for a flyer-type signing, anything like that. Give me all the J.K. Dobbins you possibly can.
Yeah, I agree. But I just want to touch on if Melvin Gordon does go to the Ravens. The other thing that concerns you, I mean, I get that I understand he'll be 29 going into the season, so he's kind of an older guy. He'll be there for 1 year. But don't you think that'll kind of cripple him a little bit, considering he just took all those touches away from Javonte last season?
No, not really. I think it's a completely different thing. Javonte Williams being a rookie coming into the league, trying to basically get accustomed to the NFL game speed. And he did look accustomed to it during the preseason. He looked phenomenal. And he looked phenomenal in the starts he got. So do I think he should have got more touches than Melvin Gordon this season because it was pretty evenly split? Yes, I do. But you look at the Ravens' backfield. Justice Hill, Achilles tear. Gus Edwards, ACL. J.K. Dobbins, ACL. Flyers on running backs. Devontae Freeman comes in. Man, what's that kid's name? Was it Tyshawn Williams? He got 4 or 5 starts throughout the year. Yeah. I mean, we're digging deep. Like, we're talking about grocery baggers at Wawa. We're talking deep when it comes to that. So when I see that, I see a coach that's a little bit concerned about some of the injury history that deals with his running backs. ACL tears aren't what they used to be, but I do see it as like a depth piece type of guy who will come in. I think it hurts Gus Edwards more than it does J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Melvin Gordon signing there, not signing there either way. Dobbins, I mean, in his rookie year, he wasn't the lead guy and still ended up leading the league in yards per carry with 6 yards per carry, 805 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns as a rookie. And he wasn't the lead guy then. So I'm not too worried about Melvin Gordon coming in now and taking anything from him. I agree with you that he kind of vultured Javonte some last year. But again, Javonte was a rookie. Denver, I don't think, quite knew what they had in him to start the year, so they got him in slow. And the Ravens have led the league in rushing the last 2 years, so I can definitely see that continuing with Lamar at quarterback. I'm a big Lamar guy, but I have no illusions about some of his passing, deficiencies. So I definitely see the Ravens continuing to be one of the top rushing teams in the league, and Dobbins has huge touchdown upside and just huge yards per carry upside, which always leads to more yards. So I'm big on Dobbins, and you're right, Chalmers. He ain't leaving my team, man.
No, I don't blame you.
First of all, real quick, I just want to say I have nothing against Dobbins. I've made moves for him twice already this offseason. Just want to check the temperature on how we're feeling about it. But, yeah, I love Dobbins. He seems like a pure runner in the NFL, and put that on the number 1 rushing offense, I think that's going to be a problem. Lamar's going to take away some rushes, but end of the day, he'll get touchdowns in the red zone. And you touched on already, Frankie, 6 yards per carry is insane.
And what people fail to realize is, man, his receiving upside. Granted, Lamar Jackson isn't a check down type of QB, but at Ohio State, he was very utilized in the receiving game. I really wish Greg Roman would look at that and be like, man, how can I utilize this guy to be on the field for all 3 downs? Because he can. He is a 3-down back.
Yep.
No weaknesses in his game. Give me all J.K. Dobbins. Another guy we do own. We all own him. To me, the biggest win, the biggest buy, the biggest win when it comes to the offseason, Javonte Williams. Pookie Williams.
Sir.
My boy.
This dude is going to be an animal of a running back. You bring in Russ, it's going to make it a lot easier. This offense is set to explode. Javonte Williams led the league in broken tackles last year and missed tackles forced. 4.5 yards a carry, showed he was more than comparable in the receiving game. I want to say it was 45 catches in the receiving game as well, but they look to get him involved in that aspect. Dude just runs hard. Those type of running backs don't usually last long, the ones that aren't afraid of contact and want contact. But I'm telling you, while I have him in his prime, I'm excited to own Javonte Williams. That dude is going to be a stud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he'll put a defender on his back and carry him another 4 or 5 yards if he has to.
Yeah,
man. Fights for yards.
Right, and when you look at it,
fantasy.
And when you look at it, I believe he drew 2 starts due to Melvin Gordon injury. And in those 2 starts, it was give Javonte the rock and let's go win this football game. And believe it or not, they're 2-0 in those 2 starts. Granted, they have a phenomenal defense there in Denver as well. A very underrated defense. And they play behind a decent O-line, nothing spectacular, but Javonte Williams is going to be the real deal. I got him last year from AJ. I had to trade Herbert to do it, and it hurt me on that end, but Javonte Williams will not leave my roster in that league. That's all I can say. I'm excited for this kid.
Yeah, man, he's built like a horse. You do not want to get in front of Javonte Williams with a head of steam. That's all anybody wrote for you for that day. Not quite Derrick Henry-esque because he's not that tall. He's just not built like Derrick Henry. Nobody's built like Derrick Henry to be frank. He's a freak. But Javonte Williams with a head of steam is one of the scarier, options in the NFL to have to take head on.
Yeah. Quick question. How you guys feeling? Do you think we could see Javonte Williams in the top 5 running backs this season?
Oh, absolutely. I think he could finish in the top 3.
Oh, wow.
In Dynasty, I'm already entrenching him in my top 3. I have no problem doing so. There's a lot of what-if factors when it comes to just a regular redraft season, especially injuries based upon running backs that are like Christian McCaffrey, guys like that. They're just absolute studs in themselves. I definitely have Javonte pegged for a top 7 season with the upside to finish top 5. But it all depends on how, injuries, everybody's injuries withhold or they get injured, things like that. But, with the upside this kid brings, I don't see how you don't have him listed as a top 10 running back right now. And with the offense.
Top 10 easily. Top 10 easily.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, for this season, I take him over Najee Harris. And I'm not thinking twice about it.
Same.
I agree.
Speaking of Najee, you guys want to talk about Mr. quote-unquote inefficient since you want to harass my boy. Duly noted, though. 3.9 yards per carry. Sure, doesn't stand out as great. Most touches in the league for a running back. Handled 96% of our running back snaps last year. But it's a little hard to run the rock when Ben is your quarterback. You could see 8-9 in the box anytime Ben had the ball in his hands. Ben was not a threat to push the ball down the field 15 yards or more. Our O-line was the worst O-line I've ever seen since Big Ben took over at quarterback in 2004. This year, made 4 offensive lineman moves via free agency. We do have the 20th overall pick. I am hoping for Trevor Penning. Other than that, Mitch Trubisky offers a little bit more of a skill set that I think Big Ben lost throughout his time. Is a mobile QB, can move on his feet. Arm is a lot better than Ben's at this point in his career as well. If he can show success and a little bit of accuracy, I think Najee's in for another monster season because there's no way he doesn't touch the ball at least 95% of the running back snaps again. Volume is king when it comes to fantasy football.
Volume's king if you can do something with it. I don't have a stern rule like Deli does with 1,500 touches, but I had to kind of go season by season. If a guy has over 330 touches in a season, I tend to try to fade him that next year. They tend to fall off a cliff, and Najee had 291 carries last year and 47 catches, so 330 is right there. Again, not a guy that I hate at all. He's, like you said, he's the king of getting all the carries there and getting all the backfield touches in Pittsburgh. But you just don't want to see a guy average that low of yards per carry when he's getting 291 carries in a season like that. That most guys, if that happens, you're finding a replacement for him the next season, or you're at least bringing in some sort of competition because he's just not getting the job done.
Yeah. I think that's a valid point. Listen, 96 is a huge number. I don't know who's second place, but I would imagine Najee was way above that mark. They got to bring somebody in to help him out, man. He's getting this many touches year in, year out, it's gonna be tough for him.
338.
It is scary. I mean, granted, it is scary, but, there are running backs that are just built different when it comes to the body size, things like that, strength, things like that. I'm honestly not going to say that Najee's invincible because nobody's invincible. But I do see our passing offense, like I said, being a step better. Nothing drastic. I'm not going to be one of those guys that, man, let's go Mitch. I'm not the believer. I know it's a stopgap option. But we were bottom 5 in the league in passing yards per game, completion percentages, things like that. I mean, we can keep going down the list. It just wasn't efficient. It wasn't an efficient offense. If there's any sort of efficiency, I think it helps Najee. Any offensive efficiency can help him. And I'm all in on, like I said, I'm all in on the volume part of Najee. It might not be the prettiest at times, but touches are touches. You know what I mean?
So I just want to get this on wax real quick, Chalmers. So what you're telling me is you think adding Mitch Trubisky is good?
I'll say this. I was one of those guys that wanted to pay up for a quarterback. I wanted the Rodgers trade. I wanted the Russ trade. I wanted possibly the Watson trade. Looking at it, when we go back and we filled our roster, got Miles Jack, got Levi Wallace, was able to bring back a Kelly Weatherspoon. Like I said, the offensive line pieces that we were able to bring in during the offseason. It helped fill my roster. It helped fill the roster. I know he's not the answer. Stopgap QB. But when you watch Ben play last year, and I've watched Ben play every snap on Sunday, Monday, or Thursday, or Saturday in the postseason for 18 years, wasn't the same guy. Arm was gone. The ability to elude and evade was gone. And I think I will say this: I don't think there's any way Mitch Trubisky can be as bad as Big Ben was last year.
I heard you say a lot of stuff without answering that question.
No, I don't believe in Mitch. No, I do not believe in Mitch. But I also don't believe in this QB class. That's why you were talking Malik Willis. I honestly don't even think Malik Willis is available for us to draft at 20. That's why I'm a huge fan of Trevor Penning.
Yeah.
And I really want to keep adding to that O-line. Like you said, last podcast, O-line is very hard to develop in this league. I'm a big fan of Trevor Penning. I'm a big fan of his athletic ability. Bring him to Pittsburgh. I hope we bring him to Pittsburgh. I do want to stay in the same division, though. I mean, you look at it. Excuse me. All the backfields in the AFC North have top 10 guys, in my opinion. Let's kick it off to Cincinnati, actually.
Hey.
Mr. Joe himself was absolutely stellar last year. 1,300 plus yards on the ground. I want to say 1,700 total scrimmage yards. I know he had 16 rushing scores. And I want to say he had 3 or 4 receiving touchdowns as well. So I don't think it was 20 totals, but let's go with 18 or 19. I think it was.
He had 12.
Huh?
12 I got here.
He had 12
12
rushing
total touchdowns.
I thought he had 16 on the ground. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm looking at something else. Anyway, Mixon, great season. Bengals, great season in general. I love the pieces they brought in. I think the Ali Marpa, the Lyle Collins, and the center they signed as well is going to be a huge, huge addition, not only for Burrow but for Mixon. Believe it or not, and if the strength of schedules have come out, and I do look at strength of schedules when I'm drafting running backs as well for redraft purposes because I do still play in one redraft league. The AFC North in general, we have a bottom 10 schedule when it comes to the defenses for the running backs. Mixon was top 3 last year, and I don't see a way that, barring injury, Mixon doesn't finish top 5. I'm very big on Mixon.
I love him with Joe Burrow. I got nothing against him. He's been nothing but solid. Joe Burrow gave him a huge difference between seasons when he was with and without. You see him, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he's averaged more yards this season than like the last few. See the uptick because obviously Joe Burrow takes away attention off of Mixon compared to when they had like, who did they even have before Burrow? Someone fill me in. I don't even remember, to be honest with you. But yeah, so you see that huge uptick with Burrow, and I think it continues as long as he stays on the field. He'll be top 5, maybe a little bit much. He finished 4 this year, so top 7 is definitely possible. But I think you might see a couple people slip up above him this season.
Yeah, Joe Mixon. Again, like we all just said, guy who immense upside, immense talent, but another guy with a lot of touches last year. So not somebody that I'm necessarily looking to go out and acquire this offseason. But if you got him on your roster, I wouldn't sell cheap. If you're going into a startup draft and you can get some good value on him, I definitely would snatch him up. But not a guy that I would necessarily look to go out and make a big move for, a big splash trade this offseason.
Yeah. Actually, shout out to Joe Mixon. He was my first overall pick in AJ's league when it all started. Where his value was then as opposed to now, value has absolutely skyrocketed because there was that year in 2021 where Mixon only played 6 games. Injury bug caught him. Yeah, injury bug caught him with that high ankle sprain and things like that. Obviously, Burrow tore an ACL that year as well. Didn't want to put Mixon at risk either. But right now, I have Mixon as a top 5 dynasty starting running back. I am all in on Mixon. I would pay the price. I tried to pay the price, and nobody else is willing to sell him.
I don't know if I'm paying the price, but if I already have him, he's going to die on my roster.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not paying for him, but if you got him, then ride him out.
I don't think if you trade him, you're gonna get just value for what you think he is. Especially if you're winning now. If you're rebuilding, different story. But
all right, let's do this then. We're a little bit split on values here between you two and me. Joe Mixon or let's say T. Higgins. You want T. Higgins on your roster or do you want Joe Mixon?
We're splitting positions now.
I'm just throwing you out some value. See, but the thing is like in the
Mixon is the answer because I'm going running back over wide receiver in this instance because wide receiver's deeper. I can get more guys like T. Higgins than I can get guys like Joe Mixon.
Right, and there's going to be guys that we talk about in the running backs, but like so with Mixon in the top 5, there's so many injury like riddled running backs that we're going to get into in a couple of minutes. Outside of the top 10, running back isn't extremely deep. So if I can go acquire a stud, I got to have a stud. You know what I mean? I want as many studs as possible when it comes to this position because wide receiver is so deep. There's legit 35 starting wide receivers every single week. And there might be 14 great running backs to start. Outside of that, it's all a crapshoot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of to Deli's point, though. Like, you have Joe Mixon, so you're going to have him valued a little bit higher because
Right.
running back is so much harder to get. But at the same time, we all understand that there's well, Deli and I are saying that there's a pretty good chance that he's probably not going to have the same season this year that he had last year, especially considering all the touches and probably considering the fact that the Bengals are going to take a step forward with their passing game. So if he gets any less passing volume, then his value goes down.
All right, so let's throw this out there. Let's say over under, let's go 1,600 scrimmage yards for Joe Mixon this year.
Under.
Okay.
He was at 1,680 last year, so
16.
Right.
Yeah, I'll go under, but probably not by much.
Let's go 11 total touchdowns.
Over.
Yeah.
And let's say
the touchdowns are very achievable.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good goal line back, and
not a lot of competition there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's say over under 45 catches.
Under.
I actually want to keep this. I'm going to write this down because I'm willing to go over. I'm willing to go over the 1,600 scrimmage yards when it comes to this. I think it's an interesting thing. I can see Mixon being that guy to go for 1,800 scrimmage yards. I love the Cincinnati Bengals roster. I love the additions on the offensive line. I think it's going to make things a lot easier for Mixon. But like I said, to each is their own. That's why I fancy football.
So last year he had 1,685 scrimmage yards and 56 catches.
I think the volume.
Right. I don't see that happening again, man. That's 56 is a lot.
So I think the volume's the same, but I think the efficiency is what's going to make things is going to change this whole bet around. Mixon is one of the most highly touted running backs coming out of college in quite some time. First round draft pick, pedigree. Got in trouble at Oklahoma, obviously.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, we're not going to talk about that, but like I said, I mean, he's just one of those special dudes. You know what I mean? And I think people think that he's underperformed to his career up until this point. But I think you're going to see the best of Joe Mixon for the next 2-3 years.
I don't know if he's necessarily underperformed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think he's probably lived up or exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember talking to a lot of people about Joe Mixon in a lot of different circles, and it was just like, man, this kid's going to be the next, just name a running back when it comes to being a Hall of Fame legacy type running back. And I mean,
fair.
So, but Deli, I'll let you. I don't think you own any values or any shares of Nick Chubb, so I'll go ahead and I'll let you talk about Nick Chubb a little bit.
So first of all, Nick Chubb, pure runner, one of the best pure runners in the league. I have nothing against him on the field, but we're talking fantasy football here. I play in all PPR leagues, so
that's not good for Nick Chubb.
I would imagine most people do. And he gets no catches. You're strictly hoping he gets touchdowns every game if you're going to expect a lot of value out of him. So that little worries me a little bit. Like, you get anybody that can, like, catch the ball out of the backfield that immediately rises up just to that next level, because they can have a game for, like, 75 yards and no touchdowns and still have, like, 5 catches for 40 yards, and that makes a huge difference. Compared to a guy who will rush for 75 and have maybe one catch out of the backfield and get you like 8.6 points on the day. And that's any given week. But with that being said, he is a absolute animal with the rock in his hands. I actually am no longer pursuing him. He's way past 1,500 mark. But talent's there. I don't really love him in fantasy football aspect of things. Thoughts on anybody else though?
So I saw an interesting thing today on Twitter. One of like a dynasty channel that I follow said, when you say somebody's one of the best pure runners you've ever seen, that basically means they're not good at fantasy football.
It's fair.
Nick Chubb.
I didn't see that actually. It's funny.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. And when I think of that, I think of strictly Nick Chubb. no disrespect to Nick Chubb, never has averaged under 5 yards a carry in the league. Dude is
Which is wild.
Yeah, crazy. Dude is a serious problem with the rock in his hands.
He's a walking first down.
Yeah, he is a serious problem with the rock in his hands. Can create anything. He's got the footwork. He's got the speed. He's got the strength. He's got every combination that you want out of your running back. But, like you said, gets no catches. It's awful.
So, would you rather have Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon, Chalmers? I know
Joe
you're going to
Mixon.
say Mixon, but
Joe Mixon. Yeah, Joe Mixon.
So Nick Chubb had 1,700 yards total last year with only 29 catches. I'm saying you were just very impressed with Mr. Mixon having
I'm surprised. 29. He had
29
catches.
is more than I was expecting
29.
too, to
Wow.
be fair. Right. So Mr. doesn't get a lot of catches, had 271 receiving yards last year too. So I know he probably didn't get very many efficient catches. It doesn't sound like 29 for 271. Sounds like a couple screens that he made a pop one or two of them. But again, 1,700 total yards is nothing to sneeze at. Yards are yards in fantasy football. Derrick Henry is never going to be Mr. King of catches, and he won a couple people a couple leagues for a couple of years. So I'm not saying Nick Chubb is Derrick Henry, but I as somebody who is an avid Florida Gators fan and hates all of these Georgia running backs always running the NFL, love Nick Chubb, man. 5 yards a carry for his career is crazy.
Yeah.
And the fact that my man can just get into the goal line anytime he's inside the 10 is perfect.
Yeah.
I will say this though. The only thing about it is when you have guys like that are dominant when it comes to the receiving game as well on top of it. In the leagues that we play in, especially with elevated point scorings, that's where Nick Chubb kind of gets left behind. And now granted, Derrick Henry did win leagues. But granted, Nick Chubb, he's almost had a 1,500 rushing yard season, but we're talking about 500 more rushing yards. And the thing is about it
I said he's not Derrick Henry.
Right. That's what I'm saying. When you're looking at that backfield, probably the best 1-2 combination in the league. Just when Kareem Hunt's on the field, he's been a little injury. He's had a little bit of an injury bug here. Same with Nick Chubb. He's played 14 games last year, missed 3, and then the year before he only played 12. He missed 7 games in the last 2 years. Not this guy that we're going to talk about, but a little bit of an injury bug when it comes to the Cleveland backfield. But Kareem Hunt just takes so much away when it comes to Nick Chubb, and it just
not if he can't catch anyway.
It just frustrates me, man. Nick Chubb is a running back one. He's a bona fide running back one, but he's frustrating at times. If he's not in the end zone, sometimes Nick Chubb can lose you a week.
Yeah, that was my point earlier. He can definitely lose you a week.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to playoff times when you need points, and
Yeah.
they're going to have a bad game, and you get Nick Chubb, who you expect to have 20 in the 20s for the playoffs. He gets 7 or 8.
Yeah, 8.
Yeah, that hurts. That hurts come playoff time.
8.3 points, 83 yards.
Yeah.
No catches.
And you look at it, and it's an efficient 83 yards, but you're like, well, damn, you didn't get in the end zone.
12 carries for 83 yards, no catches, and no touchdowns.
Right. But we're talking about the injury bug, and this is my biggest fade when it comes to a dynasty running back. A lot of people have him inside their top 5 to top 7. If I didn't have to rank him, I wouldn't, because I want nothing. I'm serious.
Jesus.
I want nothing to do with Christian McCaffrey.
Jesus.
Anybody wants him, have him. Out of the last 33 games that he was eligible to play, I want to say he missed 22 of them, 23 of them. What do you do with that? Nothing.
You trade him is what they should have done, but they decided that they wanted to hold on to him. So,
and it's no disrespect to McCaffrey, man, because he's an absolute stud of a running back. He's a game-changing type talent. He is a phenomenal player. But if you are not able to be on the field, I want nothing to do with you. That's just where I'm at with it. If you're willing to take that risk, yeah, you have top 5 upside every year. But I'm not taking that risk. I traded McCaffrey and Barkley the year he tore his ACL. Best trades I've made in my life when it came to our league. Everybody thought I was crazy, but it panned out. I mean, Dilly, you spent time in on McCaffrey. You want any shares of McCaffrey?
No. But if you have him on your roster, just keep him. You're not going to get value that you can. Because if he does end up having a healthy season, full 17 games, he's the top 3 running back every year he's healthy. But as far as trading for him, I'm not going to take that chance. I'm not going to give up too much to go out and take the chance on a guy. But if I already have him, sure, I'll ride him out for as long as I can. But just to get like how you guys value CMC, I don't know how you feel, Frankie, but would you rather have CMC or Antonio Gibson?
Gibson right now.
I agree. I would take Gibson as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want any parts of McCaffrey personally, so I wouldn't trade for him. I wouldn't draft him. I don't know if I'm ready to say I wouldn't rank him as much as Chalmers is, but
I can't stand him.
Just a guy that again, I'm not going to disavow my Falcons fandom here talking about a Panther, but just never a guy who I wanted to own in fantasy, even when he was having the top 1, 2, 3 finishes in fantasy football. Just, I don't know, man. I'm not in on the whole give this guy all of the carries, all of the touches, all of the time. That just 9 times out of 10 leads to breakdown, and he played 3 games last year. So yeah. I've been fading Christian McCaffrey for 2 straight years. I'm going to go into the 3rd straight year of fading him. So yeah, don't draft him, don't trade for him. If you have him on your team and somebody's willing to trade you for him, then take what you can get. I'm not on the Deli train of let him die on your roster. I'm on the train of cut bait while you can, get whatever value you can out of him, and keep it pushing. I'm all about value in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and if he's not worth nothing, I don't want him.
So he's a special place in my heart. Just want to say it's got the best college tape maybe ever other than Tavon Austin.
Reggie Bush.
You never seen Reggie Bush play?
True. But he's up there, all right? He's up there.
Fair. I don't disagree with that, but don't ever disrespect my man Reggie Bush like that. If I'm having a bad day, I still put on Reggie Bush tape, man. That's the GOAT right there in college football.
And the New Orleans Saints did trade 6 first-round draft picks for Ricky Williams. I mean, you can go back and watch that tape as well if you need to.
Ain't nobody got nothing on that Reggie Bush tape, man.
Could be one of the worst trades ever, I'd imagine.
It probably was one of the worst trades, but Ricky Williams was the real deal. But yeah, McCaffrey, like I said, I want nothing to do with him. I think I'm a little extreme when I say I won't rank him, because obviously you have to rank him. He's that good, but there's no running back that I don't know how far I'd let him fall. Like, I wouldn't take David Montgomery for him. You know what I mean? I'm not going to fall that far, and I hate Kamara. I would, you know what I mean? Like, that's where it's come down to for me.
How did Kamara catch a stray in this Christian McCaffrey conversation?
Because Deli has Kamara inside his top 10, and I do not.
That's not good for you, Chalmers. Alvin Kamara is very good at football.
I have faded Kamara ever since the Drew Brees retirement. Deli will know I stand by this, and I will continue to stand by this. But that's just where I'm at with it. You know what I mean? To each is their own.
We're getting into Kamara now, man. We're going to get into it.
I'll go in for Kamara with you, Frankie. But go ahead.
Yeah, bro. That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. I'm a diehard Falcons fan, and I cannot. The New Orleans Saints are my second least favorite team in the entire NFL behind the New England Patriots. So I cannot even stand to have a kind word come out of my mouth. But Alvin Kamara reminds me of Marshall Faulk every time I see him play football. So for you to say he's outside of your top 10 is wild. Unless these accusations against him come to fruition in any capacity, I don't see a world where he's outside of the top 5 finishes, maybe top 8. Top 5 is a little crazy, but he's top 8 finish for me consistently every year. If you can get a hold of Alvin Kamara, do it. I don't know where the hate's coming from for Chalmers, but Alvin Kamara is one of the most special football players I think I've ever seen in the NFL, and I know that sounds crazy, but him on the football field is magic to see.
All right, so my question to you is, outside of the legal things, we don't have to talk about it legally, because we didn't talk about it with Deshaun Watson, but up until this season had never handled a 200 carry workload. He handles that this year. In my opinion, looked very bad in doing so. The limited workload kind of kept him fresh. This year, he goes in and averages 3.7 yards per carry. You talk about Najee, Mr. Inefficient. Let's talk about Alvin Kamara. Let's bring it up, boys. Let's have this argument now.
All right.
A guy to me, now granted, he is 6 years in the league, going in 6 years, so I understand the wear and tear on the body. But
So you mean he has a track record of doing better things than Najee Harris, is what you're saying?
all right.
Well, you said let's have the conversation, man.
But my
Let's
thing about Kamara was a guy that to me was so touchdown dependent. I mean, 3 or 4 seasons of almost 18 or more touchdowns. I mean, touchdown dependency to me is a scary thing. Breeze retires. Jameis Winston was never the check down king in Tampa. His receiving work is a huge part of his game. You go from 80 catches to 47. That's a red flag for me as well when it comes to Kamara. Because when it comes to running the rock, he never stood out to me as extremely, extremely special. Like, he's not that Nick Chubb guy when he's got the ball in his hands. When it comes to running the rock, his receiving game is the most important part of his game. I faded Kamara. The Saints went into the season with $75 million over the cap. I faded him. Breeze retired. I faded him then. I'm going to continue to fade him. I'm sorry, we're just not on the same page when it comes to Alvin Kamara, boys.
Go ahead, Deli. Light him up.
Listen, man. So here's the thing. I get it. The yards per carry is definitely concerning, right? But let's talk about it. With Jameis this year, Jameis went down so early, but when he was with Jameis, he was still putting up running back 1 numbers.
Yep.
This is a guy, he finished number 8 in my league. I don't know how much that varies, but I would imagine around 8, and he missed 4 games this season. And once they lost Winston, they had who? Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian. I mean, how are you not going to look at Kamara?
Trevor, baby.
Attack the run, even make Taysom and them pass the rock, and that they're never going to win the game. So the best thing for defenses to do is take out Kamara. Bring Winston back in. I'm back in. I wouldn't say he's touchdown dependent. I would say he's reception dependent. As long as he's catching balls out of the backfield, he'll be just fine. But as long as he's finishing inside the top 10, sign me out.
I looked it up. So 3 years of his 5-year value where he had 18 or more touchdowns. That's insane.
Yeah, so you're saying a guy who's touchdown dependent. Well, it sounds like he's good at scoring touchdowns. So
he
I'm
is
okay
good.
with
He is good when it
relying
comes to
on
scoring.
that.
But my thing is, last year, like you said, he finished running back 9 in your league, Deli. PPR standard, he finished 8. But the thing is the signs are there to me as to why you fade him. And like you always talk about receiving max value for a guy like this. Going into his 27, he's 27. He'll be 27 years old going into the season.
That's crazy. He's still that young.
where's the max value lie? Like, when, you know what I mean? If you guys are truthers, when are you selling Kamara?
Well, I'm a believer in nobody's ever untradeable. So, I mean, I'm selling him whenever I get the best offer for him personally. But, I mean, if you're asking me the best time to sell him, I would say probably right now. Unless you're looking to get the peak value, because, again, with the legal troubles and not necessarily knowing how that Saints offense is going to look next year, there's maybe some things up in the air that you don't want to bet on. But, I mean, personally, I'm not trading Kamara unless I get a home run offer. So I wouldn't move off of him unless I'm getting, somebody in the top 5 to 8 running backs back.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Eckler or Kamara?
Eckler
or I'm sorry, Kamara or Dobbins?
Kamara.
Okay.
Kamara or Dalvin Cook?
Kamara.
Okay. And Kamara or Chubb?
Kamara.
All right, so where you have him at? You have him at you got Kamara at 8, 9.
I said that. Top
and
5,
that's
top
fair.
8.
I ranked Kamara at 12. No disrespect. like I said, he's just one of those guys I'm fading. I've been fading heavily for about a year and a half now. Ryan, you know that. I want to know parts of him. But
So you think he's going to be the worst running back one, basically, which is fine. Just
yes, I do. And I stand by that. Yes, I do.
okay.
And it's no, and like I said, man, it's not that I don't like Kamara. It's no disrespect to Kamara, but the writing on the wall is there with the Saints. Like I said, huge roster turnover. The Breeze retirement really hurt me when it came to him because him and Breeze were like a special connection. But like I said, I'm not going to continue to get into it. But yes, I have been faded.
Well,
So
as a Falcons fan, I hope you're right.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Dilly.
So I just moved Kamara in my big league. I moved Prescott and Kamara in a package, and in return, I got Godwin, Dobbins, and Fields. Thoughts on that trade?
I like the return on that trade because I like Dobbins a whole lot. I'm more of a believer in Fields in terms of the talent than some other people, not necessarily the situation right now. And Godwin, I think, is going to be easy wide receiver one, no matter where he's at or who he's playing with. So, yeah, I like that deal. I am fading Dak a little bit personally with some of the offseason stuff as we discussed on the quarterback pod.
Okay.
I'll talk about my quarterback like that, man.
It's my quarterback.
It's my quarterback. Now, Deli, I thought you won the deal because it's not like you didn't just go flip Justin Fields and Elijah Mitchell in 15 minutes. But to each their own. I'm not going to talk about it. It still pisses me off a little bit. But let's get into it, man. We talked about him. He's a little bit older than most when it comes to your dynasty running back ones, but he didn't get a true workload, I want to say, until about two years ago, maybe 3. Austin Eckler, man, he is a absolute monster.
Yes, sir.
I own Eckler in AJ's league. And I feel like people have lowballed me for the last 4 offers I've seen. And it's crazy to me because of a guy that's so involved in the running game now and also the receiving game and the efficiency that he offers. And it's like you want to pay for a running back one, please pay me for the appropriate value for this guy. I mean, Austin Eckler was top 6, and that's including quarterbacks in our league. I mean, we're talking about a game-changing running back, and he didn't get started until like 24, 25 years old. You know what I mean? When it comes to touching the rock. I think he's a guy that can play up until he's 30. Maybe not 30, but I mean, I can see that.
So Eckler's a guy I think suffers a little bit from our East Coast bias. A little bit around here. We don't see as much of them maybe as we would, some of the other guys we see. Those 1:00 games come on and there's 8 to 10 of them going at a time, and you got red zone on and you're just seeing all these highlights pop up. And then the 4:00 games come on and God forbid the Cowboys or the Packers are playing, and that's going to be the primary game you're seeing on red zone. And if you don't have red zone, that's the only game you're seeing. So a little bit of rough going for some of the West Coast teams sometimes, I feel like, in fantasy football over here. But I think Austin Eckler, super stud, super involved in every aspect of that Chargers game, running, passing. He's a great run blocker, or a great pass blocker. So if he needs to stay in and pass pro, he's great at that. So Austin Eckler's a guy I was able to get my hands on this offseason as well. So guy I'm super high on, probably running back 2 ranking, running back 3 ranking at the lowest just going into the season. Maybe not where he's going to finish, but that's where I'd value him going into the season.
Yeah, I like Eckler. As long as – and he said 30, maybe not. 30, sure. I think he's going to have a timeless game as long as he stays on the field and he's with Herbert. Why not? Herbert goes to him when he's being rushed, when he's panicking, when he's get the ball out of his hands. He looks for Eckler. Even in the red zone, I've seen multiple times in this past season where they're inside the 5 and he's looking around and he'll just shovel it off to Eckler real quick for the touchdown, and it's going to continue. Obviously, it's the Chargers guy. They have running backs. They've drafted running backs. They haven't made any difference. So that just tells me they're just going to keep rocking with Eckler until
the wheels fall off.
The wheels fall off.
Yep, for real.
Yeah. And I think what's so special about Eckler is that when you watch him play on Sundays, he plays with such a passion as well. Also, shout out to Austin Eckler, a huge fantasy football fan.
Yep.
I love to see that. But he did say one thing. He will never draft himself.
Bold move, man. It's bold,
Bold
move.
move.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we'll strategy.
down twice.
Yeah, because you're really good. Eckler, you are very good. Please draft yourself. But no, and like AJ offered me a trade for him. It was right when Godwin tore his ACL. Right at the end of the year, because I made that trade for Eckler at the end of the year with Jake, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll give you Godwin for him." I'm like, "Man, I can't do it. I can't do it." Like, what? Who do you need to get rid of Eckler? Give me a player.
Nobody, like I said, nobody's tradable.
Yeah,
I don't care. I don't care the position.
RB2, RB3. So I mean, unless I'm getting, I'd probably move him in a deal to get one of the top quarterbacks, maybe. But I'd still probably want to get pretty solid running back value back. Running back's not very deep, so.
CeeDee Lamb or Austin Eckler?
Eckler.
Okay.
All right, you were very high on this.
I agree.
You were very high on this guy. Eckler or AJ Brown?
Eckler.
Ooh, we're getting close.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, that's closer, but still
Yes.
Eckler.
Okay, so now we see where Eckler's value is as according to all three of us. Yeah, I just feel like I got lowballed in that league. I got 5 offers for Eckler from the minute I traded for him, and it just wasn't. I was like, guys, like we got to do better here. A guy that Deli you love, you traded Derrick Henry for him. Let's talk about Antonio Gibson a little bit, man.
I like Gibson. I touched on it a little bit earlier about like as far as his usage goes, still got fresh legs, fresh body. Yeah, I think he still has a chance to get better at the running back position. He has experiences in it, and he's already played great. For a second there, for about 24 hours, I thought that Gibson had moved into maybe a top 10 running back role, but they turn back around and go back to McKissick again. They love McKissick there. He's going to eat away at him as long as he's there, which definitely sucks. But I don't understand why the Commanders don't use Gibson more. It kind of pains me sometimes watching them play. I'm just like, there's situations where they can kick it out to him, or situations they could definitely give him the ball. Like I've seen like 3rd and 2s where they're giving McKissick the ball. Why not Gibson there? The usage is still improving, but we'll figure it out. I'm still high on him, and I still think that he's got decent value.
Yeah, I like Gibson a lot. I don't like the Commanders. Other than Terry McLaurin, I'm probably staying away from any Commanders this offseason personally. I drafted Gibson relatively high in a redraft league last year, and ended up having to trade him about 4 games into the season, and was fortunate enough to be able to get Zeke back for him. And Zeke had a pretty decent year last year, but yeah, I'm not a guy that I dislike in any capacity. I think he's an uber talented guy who, if he gets in the right situation, which unfortunately he's going to have to try to be the Commanders, I think he could just explode and end up being one of the better running backs in the league. Just unfortunately, we haven't been able to see it just yet. We've seen a lot of the potential, just not a lot of the production just yet. So hopefully this season he can pop.
I'm waiting for it, man.
Yeah, I believe in Gibson too. I have 1 share of Gibson. I don't have as many shares as others, but rookie year comes out right out of Memphis. Actually, a double-digit touchdown year showed me a lot when it came to being a running back as opposed to a wide receiver. I thought he played the position rather well. And what I mean by that is more real life things. Was able to read his blocks, was able to, show his vision, show things like that. But the pass protection, we always talk about running backs when it comes to their pass protection. I didn't see anything that made me extremely worried in that aspect. Year 2, I actually thought he took a step back. I thought he was better his rookie year. When it came to the extended workload, kind of took a step back for me. I still have Gibson as a low end running back 1, a decent building piece. But if he is your running back 1, I would look to get somebody better.
Yeah.
Would you rather have him or Kamara?
Gibson. I'll take Gibson.
Over Kamara?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm fading Kamara, bro. You're never going to change my mind.
Just checking.
You can't change my mind on this, big dog.
No, I don't want to change.
Don't offer me Kamara.
I don't have him, so I can't offer him. But I would definitely send you a trade after this pod if I had him, just to see where you were at.
I was going to get insulin decline, bro. I'm trying to tell you. But when it comes to it, you know, we talked about a lot of talent here, but like when it comes to it, who's your guys' biggest wins of the offseason? And I'll start mine off. It's hard because not a lot has affected the running backs as opposed to the wide receivers and quarterbacks. But one running back I think benefited the most was the signing back to Tampa Bay with Tom Brady coming out of retirement. And this is more redraft purposes because I want nothing to do with Leonard Fournette in a dynasty setting. But Leonard Fournette, man, like I said, the guys that like to induce contact and love contact, they tend to not last long in the league. Fournette's 27 now. He never lived up to that top 4 draft pick status regardless. I don't care what anybody says. He never did. I was never impressed with him. Other side that, 80 catch season he had with the Jaguars, that outlier year where he was he finished as a top 5 back in Jacksonville. I've always been a fade Leonard Fournette guy ever since the Jacksonville days. Never
Didn't
lived
he
up
have
to that.
close to a top 5 finish last year?
He did. The Tampa Bay is a little bit different. Like I said, I never liked him in Jacksonville. The LSU Leonard Fournette that I saw, I thought was going to be a game-changing player. Never saw it in the league. Last year he played really well down the stretch. Gets the nickname Playoff Lenny, but unfortunately in the NFL playoffs, our fantasy season's done. But I do think he's a winner in a redraft setting. I think playing with Tom Brady brings out the best in him. And I could see, if Brady does play 1-2 more years, I could see him being a late first, second round pick in redraft settings. So he's one of my winners for the year.
Yeah. So far for what's that, Billy?
Who in the top 2 rounds of his startup? Oh, redraft. I'm sorry.
Redraft setting purposes, because this isn't a guy that I gotta have in Dynasty.
Yeah, so far for the offseason, Javonte Williams is my biggest winner. I mean, the subtraction of Melvin Gordon, I mean, he hasn't signed anywhere just yet, so I guess the possibility of Melvin Gordon coming back in and raining on all of our parade is still there, but just Melvin Gordon being out of that backfield just, I think, boosts Javonte Williams to the moon. A couple games last year where Melvin Gordon didn't play, and I'm pretty sure Javonte Williams finished as the RB like 2 or 3 those 2 weeks, so just a guy who just addition by subtraction, I didn't even mention Russ getting there to help that offense just open up. He's going to have much lighter boxes going into the season just all the time. That skill position group is banana sandwich. So I think Javonte Williams is the biggest winner of this offseason by a good bit.
I agree with you. I just didn't want to be the stereotypical guy. I let somebody else talk about Javonte.
I'll talk about him all day, man.
You guys already hit on both of my winners, so I'll just touch on both. I've already set my gas to Javonte earlier, so you already know how I feel about him. He's full go. But Fournette, finish top 6. As long as Brady's there, he's good. But my question is like, all right, if you're sitting there with a championship roster, right? And you need, close to a championship roster. You need one more piece to go get it this year. Would you not pay like a second-round pick for Leonard Fournette?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I would.
In a heartbeat.
I think you definitely get him that low. Most people might see it as like a one-and-done season, which is, yeah. But, I mean, if you're contending, I think Fournette's a pretty good buy this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I did it when I traded James Conner last year. I juiced the orange, and Smitty became running back dependent. Derrick Henry went down. He needed a running back. I had depth at that time. He traded for James Conner. Great trade. James Conner, top 10 season last year. A shit ton of touchdowns. I can't give you the exact number. I want to say 15. Can't give you that exact. It was a lot. But why
It
not?
was stupid.
James Conner at that point gave him a real shot to win with his roster.
Yeah, he gave it first too, so different story.
Yeah. So it is what it is. I mean, Fournette this year is a huge piece. Huge piece.
Yeah.
Also, there is one more guy I do want to touch on. The Devontae Adams trade. I think this opens up a lot for Aaron Jones. Frankie, we talked before the podcast. You said you didn't see it as much as I did. I see Aaron Jones returning to 2020 status, a top 5 season in the works. I know A.J. Dillon's there. I know some carries going to get taken out or get taken away from him. But that's a lot of targets to come out to get that are got to get divvied up somewhere. I don't think a first-year receiver is ready to step in to 150-plus targets. Uh-oh. Hannah is awake. But yeah, I don't think a first-year receiver is ready to step into a target share that big. And I don't even know if the Packers are going to draft a receiver. They haven't gotten their draft picks right in quite some time. They could surprise all of us and not draft one. Who knows? I mean, they drafted Jordan Love in the first round.
They do hate Aaron Rodgers in the draft, I will say.
They hate Aaron Rodgers for some reason in the draft when it comes to it. It comes to building around him. And, I mean, that's just me. I think he's one of the biggest winners this year. I could see him having an 80-target year, 90-target year. I really could.
I just don't see it. I mean, I can see him I don't see him falling off of a cliff or anything, but I don't see him having some huge uptick to where he's going to be back to his 2020, like you said, status. I think he's going to be much closer to 2021 Aaron Jones than he was 2020 Aaron Jones, especially with running backs. I think once you see that decline, typically they don't get back to peak. They might stay consistent and they might have some pretty solid production still, but 9 times out of 10, once those running backs have those career years, it's really, really hard for them to repeat that. So yeah, I like Aaron Jones. I like the Packers running back or backfield just in general, but just maybe not as high on Aaron Jones as you drummers.
But I'm
with Frankie a little bit here on Aaron Jones. Here's the thing. I mean, he's not going to get back to 2020 because Dillon's there. I don't think it's because of lack of talent. I think it's because Dillon's there to take away touches and he hits the predecessor. And I'll let you speak on whatever you're going to say, but I got another guy I want to talk about too.
But I guess my biggest thing is like you guys are talking about Aaron Jones not getting back to a peak status. But last year, was it him falling off or was it an injury that really affected Aaron Jones? Because Aaron Jones was never completely healthy in 2021.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think A.J. Dillon kind of had a lot to do with that. And I think that the Packers trying to open up their offense a little bit more may have had something to do with that too. When Aaron Jones is on the field and they don't have A.J. Dillon on the field too, you kind of know what's happening, that it's a passing down. Or at least that's how they were running it last year. So just without the versatility of Aaron Jones, I think it's like how you were fading Kamara because of his lack of catching. I think he's going to have some catching upside this year with Adams leaving, but I definitely think the Packers are going to take at least one wide receiver in the draft, if not 2, and move forward with that. And if you draft a wide receiver in the first round, you got to get him some type of production. So you're going to give him targets. So that kind of eats in to that Devontae Adams workload that you're saying is going to go more towards Aaron Jones. So that's kind of why I'm, again, not fading Aaron Jones per se, but just not necessarily thinking he's one of the bigger winners in the offseason is all.
I got you. Deli, you said you wanted to talk about one guy.
Yeah, when you brought Devontae Adams, I thought you were actually going to touch on Josh Jacobs, which I think is going to have a significant uptick this season. I think it'll open up a lot for him, to be honest with you. Any attention he can get away from him will be fantastic. Devontae Adams is, well, yeah, he's the best receiver Derek Carr's had. I mean, he had Amari Cooper, but give me Adams over Cooper.
Just say it, bro. He's the best receiver in the game. Just say it, bro.
Period.
Shit. He really is. But no. So I think we'll see Josh Jacobs back 2019 when he was doing better things compared to this past season. I'm kind of back on. I was on the Jacobs horse, then I was back. I hopped off, right? Jumped back on now.
Yeah, I haven't thought too much about Josh Jacobs this offseason, just so I don't have too much on him. But just, I think that he definitely can have a bounce back season. Drake's not there anymore, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a big win for him. But yeah, I think Josh Jacobs probably going to have a pretty big season. Raiders see what they can do.
Yeah, for sure. Just a couple of guys I do want to talk about as my top fades. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to put Kamara on this list, even though I should.
You've already done it, man. He's already your biggest fade.
But no, in all seriousness, I think my biggest fade now, and he progressively as we go year in, year out with this guy, one of the best running backs to come in the league. You know, I mean, he's very respected, been a very established running back his whole career. He's had a special career up until this point, but I do see him slowing down a lot. He's not the same explosive guy he was in 2016. I'm fading Zeke. I am fading Zeke. Running back one finishes, consistently. I think the only time he didn't was when he had that 4-game suspension. And 6-game suspension. I'm sorry, he played 10 games that year. But the writing's on the wall. Zeke is slowing down. The injury bug seems to be catching him a lot more. Tony Pollard, I don't think is a true 3-down back, but he's nipping at his heels. I'm fading Zeke now, and I will take anything. If I can get a first-round pick this season or in 2023, I take it, and I wouldn't look back.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on Zeke, pretty much everything you said there. One of my biggest fades this offseason, another guy we didn't really touch on too much, but Dalvin Cook. I think Madison's going to get a pretty hefty chunk of that workload this year. Not hefty, but he's going to cut into that workload a little bit. Cook, just his whole career, hasn't been able to stay healthy. So another guy who just not really feeling too fond of adding to my roster or having on my roster if he can't stay healthy. Availability sometimes is the best ability, and he doesn't seem to be available all the time, particularly when you need him. So Dalvin Cook is one of my biggest fades this offseason. Not a guy I've ever really owned in fantasy, but not a guy that I, again, looking to acquire in any capacity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do. Who you got, Dilly?
All right. Now I get to confess my hate for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Finally. Finally. If he's even considered a fade at this point, if you can find somebody that's high on him, anybody, pick his roster, see what you can get for him.
What?
Huh?
What? I don't know anybody that likes Clyde.
You got to find somebody, man. Get him off, man. Get him off.
Find you a Chiefs fan.
Huh? Yeah, find a Chiefs fan.
Find you a Chiefs fan and add him to your league.
Facts. Find a big Chiefs Mahomes believer.
The Chiefs fans even like Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Like,
he had that goal line carry last year, man. They might still like him.
Hey, you never know. But nah, I don't like Clyde. I actually made one of the biggest mistakes in my dynasty career so far. Looking back on it, was stupid as fuck.
Yeah, let's talk about
it. In my startup draft, I did take Clyde over Jonathan Taylor, which was fucking terrible. But in hindsight, at the time, you got Clyde with Burrow at LSU. He showed out. He comes to the Chiefs, the number one offense with no running back. So everybody's like, ooh, shiny new piece, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, catch the ball in the backfield and run for touchdowns, right? That never came to fruition. Jonathan Taylor became that guy, obviously.
Imagine if the Chiefs took Taylor.
Yeah.
So, Deli, that brings me to a point. How much does talent or landing spot outweigh each other? Because, I'm always a guy that believes in talent ahead of landing spot. Obviously, the landing spot with Clyde Edwards-Helaire was perfect, which forced you to take him over Jonathan Taylor in that startup draft. So, what's more important, talent or landing spot?
See, I used to be on the talent side. until I've kind of like caught into the trend that I think it's obviously talent. You take the talent. I think I understand that Tua and Jalen Waddle had that dynamic in college, but I think you saw Waddle fall a little bit in drafts. I think in most drafts I had him, he was going late first round, early second. So you saw that too, and Waddle did just fine. He broke the reception record. So I'm definitely talent now. Just look at tape for the rookies and just whoever looks the best on the field, please just don't worry about where they land. Just go talent.
So do you think
Yeah.
Spicer made a bad choice when he drafted Travis Etienne last year over Javonte Williams?
Always and forever. Yeah. I'll probably never forget that. I got blessed. I really did.
You sure did.
Yeah, another guy I'm fading this offseason, Cam Akers. We
Thank
didn't
you.
talk about him at all.
Thank you.
But just a guy who came back and looked like an absolute shell of himself last season.
He did.
I personally think he came back too early. So, I mean, who the hell am I? I'm not a doctor. I don't know Cam Akers in any single capacity whatsoever. So what the heck do I know? But maybe don't rush back from an Achilles tear. I don't know. It sounds like a bad idea. So just not a guy I'm looking to have on my team anywhere. If you can dump him, dump him. I was fortunate enough to be able to move off of Cam Akers this offseason. Yeah, just not a guy I want anything to do with at all.
And my question to you is, Frankie, not just from playing fantasy football, let's talk football. Have you ever, and in my time watching football, I've never seen anybody come back from that injury. And when it happened, Deli owned him in our league, and Deli was like, the medical advancements, maybe there's a possibility he can bounce back, things like that. Obviously, you want to be optimistic about something like this when an injury like that happens. But the Achilles injury is the biggest red flag for the running back position. I don't see how he even comes back to play even close to what he did his rookie year. You know what I mean?
Same.
I mean, do you think there's any hope he can come back, or do you think he's washed?
No, I think he's cooked. I think an Achilles tear is really tough to come back from. I think it's even tougher when you rush it. I think it's even tougher when you consider I think he aggravated the injury in the Super Bowl. If he didn't, he got another injury of some capacity in the Super Bowl to where he didn't end up finishing the game, I don't believe. But yeah, just I'm out on Akers all around. I'm super high on him going into last season. I thought he was going to light the world on fire. But again, like you said, tearing your Achilles, I don't want no parts.
Yeah, he's roster locked with a couple of my teams. Can't seem to find a trade partner for him. So I'm going to remain optimistic. And here's my optimistic take. He did definitely come back sooner. And it was painful as an owner of him to watch him play. I think they should have just given him rest. They won the Super Bowl without him. He was a shell of himself, like you said. They didn't need to have him on the field. I think you got a little bit of optimism given the fact that you're going to have a whole offseason now for it to recover.
Sure.
You're 100% right. Achilles tears in the long run, or as far as back we could look, is a killer for running backs. But like I said, these doctors get better and better every year. We've seen ACL tears, which used to be a huge factor in football, which are now like, these guys are going back perfectly fine. I'm not completely out on Akers yet. I'm not going to trade for him, but I'm also not going to undersell him. I think he could still bounce back. Plus, in most situations, I think he's my running back 3-4 area. So,
yeah.
But so what's your undersell? Because if you can't find a trade suitor, how are you underselling at that point? You know what I mean?
I'm sure I can find somebody that can take him for maybe a second round pick and a play or something like that. But I don't know. I'd rather just hold on. He's on the Rams offense, which is a phenomenal offense. So if he can figure anything out and bring back even 80% of his talent from the Achilles tear, he'll still be just fine.
Just to just to wrap this up, when it comes to this, there's one guy that we didn't talk about, and I feel very disrespectful for this guy. To me, he's locked into my top 5. I'm so sorry, but we did not talk about DeAndre Swift. I do want to cover. I do want to cover Swift just a little bit for a quick second, and then we can wrap this up and go into what we're talking about next week. DeAndre Swift, 775 rushing yards as a true freshman his rookie year or his freshman year at Georgia, playing with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. He's an absolute monster. Please stop. He's an absolute monster, man. He dominated the SEC. You are a Florida Gators fan. He dominated the SEC, dude. Also, last year came in, only played 13 games. Injury bug caught him a little bit, but when he was on the field, he averaged 18.5 fantasy points per game over a full season, put him at running back 5. He's special when he's on the field, whether it be in the running game or the receiving game. I don't think you've seen the best of DeAndre Swift. I think his upside is limitless, and I do think he is the next Alvin Kamara. Yes, I said it here, prime Alvin Kamara. I do think he is that next guy. I'm very excited to own Swift for this time. Anybody want to chime in on Swift for just a second?
Yeah, so I kind of have one more rule that I go by. I know I said the 330 touches thing. But another rule I'm going by this season is no Lions players, period. So I am completely out on DeAndre Swift because I want 0 parts of a terrible offense. That is a fantasy rule I'd like to live by. No bad offenses on your fantasy football team. I had a couple Jets last year, so I broke my rule. But yes, no bad offenses on fantasy football, and I can definitely see the Lions being one of the bottom offenses in the NFL this year. So count me out on Swift. I think he's an uber talented guy, just one of the worst situations you could possibly ask for a running back on a rebuilding team.
Agree. You have a heavy depend on receptions because, any other team you can see his touchdowns go way up, but we're talking about Jared Goff and the Lions here, so.
Or a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, or a rookie quarterback. Either way they go, but yeah.
Neither way is good.
Either way is not good. But I do love his talent, and I think if he ever finds a quarterback or somehow gets traded to move to a different team, I think that's when you get into the whole conversation of the sky's the limit for Swift. But as of right now, he's got that ceiling because of the Lions. But nothing to take away from his game. I think next Alvin Kamara isn't too far off as far as play style on the field. But we're never going to see as many touchdowns as Kamara did with Swift until he gets on a different team or they have a huge change of quarterback.
Fair enough. I just want to give a shout out to my guy. I'm a big Swift fan. But other than that, that's all. That's it for running backs, fellas. We dived into some real talented players here. Guys that are league winners. Fade Alvin Kamara. Please don't listen to these two. Other than that, last thing we got to talk about, Deli, before we start getting into the 2022 rookie draft coverage is tight ends. Probably going to be our shortest podcast because outside the top 8, 9, it is what it is. It's a crapshoot. Tight ends are your catchers when it comes to your fantasy sports, fantasy baseball equivalency. It's a crapshoot, but there are some guys I can't wait to talk about. One being a Falcon, and one I will not talk about, but I have him as my consensus tight end 1, which would be a Raven. I don't really like talking about him, but other than that, then we're going to get into 2022 draft coverage. I can't wait for that one. I think this class is very underrated. A lot of people are fading this class, but I think it's a very underrated class with a lot of talent that people might be sleeping on. After that, I think we have a mock draft scheduled. We have a mock draft with a couple of our buddies going to come in here, and we're going to discuss the picks, things like that, which I'm excited for. Other than that, Del, you got anything?
No, all good. Subscribe button. If you're still here, might as well press it. We need all the follows we can get, all the likes we can get, all the exposure we can get. Just trying to grind this system out. We still got a long way to go, so any help is appreciated.
Yes.
Takes 2 seconds. Click the bell when you make new videos, and keep
also,
riding.
we do want to talk about it. We have partnered with Let's Talk Sports. A very interesting story when it comes to the guy that runs the page. You can read his story. I just want to say that he is a very very unique story and a very touching story. Was paralyzed in a sporting accident when it came to that, and now he's famous when it comes to talking to sportscasters from every walks of life: MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, MMA, soccer, golf. It's awesome. And he has partnered with us on our podcast, which is pretty cool, pretty dope. So I do want to give a little shout out to him. And this will be featured on his Facebook page and his Twitter page as well. So just check him out if you get a chance. Other than that, that's all I got for the day, boys. Tight ends this weekend. We're going to get together and talk about tight ends. We're out, fellas.
Deuces.